Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Jazz. If you are not new here, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. Today I am going to go ahead and get into a hair video. We're going to be talking about a grid. Do you need a grid or do you not need a grid? I feel like this is a very hot topic amongst people that are looking to start their locks or their micro locks. Do I need a grid? Do I not need a grid? And today we are going to get into my opinion on grid versus no grid. So let's get into it. And before we go ahead and dive into it, actually, don't forget to subscribe, like, share with a friend. Back to the question of the day, grid versus no grid. So first I'm going to quickly explain really what a grid is. A grid is when you have like perfect, even, neat, clean parts. A lot of people will even like measure their head or even measure the individual parts to make sure that they're all even. Now, if you have sister locks, which I do not, I believe that they have their own specific grid pattern, which I think is the part of like what sets them apart from micro locks. Now, as for me personally, if you have been watching my other videos, then and you could probably kind of tell now, I do not at all have a grid. So all my parts are not the same size. All my locks are not the same size. I actually intended, before I started my micro locks, which I'm DIY, so I started them myself, and I did the research. I looked through YouTube videos, and I had every intention on attempting to give myself as even and as clean parts as I possibly could. However, it didn't quite work out that way. I am a notoriously bad parter. Like, I'm awful at parting. Just period. I'm terrible at that. I'm also very impatient. So as I was starting my locks and I really tried to do my best to make my parts as nice as possible, it just didn't quite work out that way. I also do prefer a more natural look. So I'm not so attached to, you know, everything looking symmetric, everything looking perfect. That really has never been the type of style that I have when it comes to my hair. I'm super low maintenance, and you know, I kind of like everything to look imperfect is really my preference. So that's really why I don't have a grid. Before we really get into it, is a grid necessary or is it not necessary? Do you need a grid or do you not need a grid? In my personal opinion, and again, I'm not a loctician, I'm not a professional, but in my opinion, it all comes down to preference. So whether or not you have a grid or you don't have a grid, it just depends on the things that are important to you. What is your priority? So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of hit on some things that would be, like, I guess, a benefit of having a grid. So with a grid, you're gonna have those clean, even parts. For a lot of women, that is very important. It is more aesthetically pleasing in a lot of people's opinions. It looks nice and even. It's gonna look really good if you are really into doing styles with your locks. So if you're someone who is really, really loving doing styles and plan on doing that when you have your locks, having a grid is probably something that will be beneficial to you. Now, this is not to say that if you don't have a perfect grid that you can't do those styles, because you can do those same styles. It's just going to be a matter of how even does it look, how clean does it look. If that's something that you care about, then you're probably wanting to have a grid. Also, if you like all your locks to be the same size, by no means are all my locks the same size. They're all pretty small for the most case. I do consider my locks to be micro locks. Now, they have swelled a lot since I first started them, but I still, I think, consider them micro locks. But if you are very adamant on having all your locks be pretty close to exactly the same size, then that's going to be more possible if you do have a specific measured grid. Now, my advice, if you are someone that really, really wants a grid, I would recommend that if you're gonna do it DIY, maybe you're someone that should be good at parting. Because if you're like me, who I'm awful at parting, I knew that trying to give myself a perfect grid was just not realistic. So you're probably gonna want to have some parting skills. If you're not good at parting but you're adamant on having that grid, then you probably either need to go to a loctician or you need to have someone help you when you're starting your locks. Now, if you know someone that's pretty good at parting, obviously it's going to be a lot easier for someone else to do it because they have like a, you know, a full view of your head. have someone help you if you don't want to go to a loctician. If you do it yourself, you are going to want to make sure that you have some mirrors so that you can see like behind, and you can see the back of your head. So you're going to want to have like some mirrors, some extra mirrors around, and then a lot of patience, because it does take a lot of time and patience to get those perfect parts. Now, what is, I guess, the benefit or someone who might be a good candidate for not having a grid? If you're just impatient, or you're also like me, not good at parting, then having a perfect grid may be something that you also kind of want to let go of. If you don't care to have clean parts, or you want a more natural look, a imperfect or lack of a grid would work for you. In my opinion, I just feel like sets of locks without grids kind of look more natural, especially right after like maintenance, so either a retwist or an interlocking session. I think that it still looks a whole lot more natural. You're not seeing so much scalp. Now, if scalp is something that you like to see, and a lot of people do like to see scalp, if you like the scalpy look and if you like the perfect grid, then of course the grid is for you. But if you're not attached to that, or maybe that's something that you actually don't prefer, because some people don't prefer it, then no grid will definitely give you that more natural, organic look. It's also good for DIYers. Like I said, you know, we're not all great at parting. We're not all impatient. We don't all have super strong arms. So if that applies to you, then, you know, it is going to be a lot easier to upkeep, because you don't have to make sure that you are maintaining those perfectly perfect parts every time you do an interlocking session. Now, I will say this. I have seen lots of people, I am a member of a few groups on Facebook for locks and micro locks, and I have seen a lot of people mention that, you know, a grid is necessary, or you're gonna want, you know, a grid. Make sure that you take time with your grid. Now, of course, if you're doing a grid, you definitely do want to take your time. However, in my opinion, I don't believe that it's necessary. I don't think that your hairs are going to look bad if you don't have a grid. And I've even seen some people go as far as saying that the health of your hair will suffer if you don't have a grid. Now, in my experience and the experience that I see on like YouTube and Instagram of other people who don't have a perfect grid, I don't see the health of their hair being compromised because they don't have a perfect grid. To me, it doesn't quite make logical sense as to why not having a perfect grid would make your hair unhealthy. If someone knows better, definitely leave in the comments as to why it does. I'm just not sure of it, and it hasn't been my personal experience. There are so many women that do have perfect grids. I would probably say more women do than don't, based on what I've seen. So it is a very common thing to have a grid, but I also see it's very common not to. And if you're thinking about it and you're letting that idea of having to have a perfect grid stop you from like getting locks, don't let it stop you, sis. Like, you don't have to have a perfect grid. It's okay. And also, on the other hand, it's also perfectly okay to want a grid. Like, there are a lot of sensible reasons as to why you should want one. But like I said, it definitely all comes down to personal preference. Neither side is right or wrong. Neither side is unhealthy or unhealthy. So definitely just think about what your priorities are, what your preferences are, and make a decision based on that. It's your hair. You get to make your own decisions. And no one else can tell you what's, you know, right or wrong about the decisions that you make as far as your grid is concerned. Again, I will say this. If you are someone that really wants a grid, but is not good at parting, definitely just seek a loctician. Go to someone that can help you. And I think that that will be best for you. If you are someone that does not care about those partings, and you really just want to have control over your own hair, then DIY would definitely be the way to go for you. Alright, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop the video here. Ladies and guys, if you watch this video, definitely drop in the comments whether or not you have a perfect grid or whether or not you don't have a grid, and we can talk about it down in the comments. And then definitely comment if you are thinking about locks but you haven't started it yet. Are you gonna get a grid or are you not gonna get a grid? Again, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share with a friend. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. And thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye.